So, here at Pondering Politics, one of the things we like to do is have conversations with interesting people. And I have a particularly interesting person because he is one of 435 sitting members of Congress. He's one of the most powerful people in the country. And in this time when the Trump administration is running roughshod over democracy, over norms, over the American people, quite frankly, I think it's important to have a productive dialogue with those who could potentially hold him in check. And so I have with me Congressman Raja Krishnamoorthi of Illinois, who is, by the way, running for that state Senate seat in 2026 to replace the outgoing Senator Dick Durbin. Congressman, how are you?
I'm good, Jessiah. How are you?
I'm doing very well under the circumstances. I think
Yeah,
the
I
best any
know.
of us can. So, Congressman, listen. For my audience's benefit, if you could just introduce yourself very briefly, who you are, your background, your committee assignments. Let them know a little bit more about you, and then we're going to jump into some of the big topics.
Sure. Well, thank you so much for having me on. I'm Raja Krishnamoorthi, and I was born in India. I'll tell you a little bit about my background. I was born in India. I came to this country when I was 3 months old to Buffalo, New York, where my father was studying engineering. And then things were going great until suddenly they did not in the recession of 1973. At that point, my father lost his income. But thanks to the generosity of the American people, we were allowed to move into public housing and food stamps. So I spent about half of my early childhood in those two life-sustaining programs. My father was able to get on his feet, complete his education, and then get a great job in, of all places, Peoria, Illinois. They loaded up the U-Haul and started driving and driving till they reached Peoria. And that's where we entered the middle class. And pretty much every night, my father would say, something like, think of the greatness of this country. And whatever the two of you do, my brother and me, just make sure it's there for the next families who need it. That became the North Star of my personal compass, ultimately my mission statement and my why. And fast forward through college and law school and stints in the public and private sector, I got elected to this position. And 5 terms later, I'm still pursuing that mission statement, and so is my staff. And so here in Congress, I sit on 3 committees, Jessiah. I sit on the House Oversight Committee. I sit on the Intelligence Committee. And then I'm the ranking member of I guess you could call it the China Select Committee or Select Committee on the Chinese Communist Party and the competition. And how do we win the global economic, technological, and security competition?
Yeah, I mean, listen, you have a fascinating portfolio, fascinating background that I think makes you a really unique voice for this particular moment, given, Trump's, I'm going to be super generous, even though he doesn't deserve it, complicated relationship with China, his xenophobia, the bigotry of so much of his administration. And the fact that you sit on oversight is a really, really big deal. And we're definitely going to circle around to that. But, in your conversation about your background, you mentioned, your family's the assistance that your family got from federal programs for social safety nets, and Donald Trump is waging a war on these social safety nets. Medicaid, what they call food stamps, SNAP benefits, things of that nature. So, can you talk about the deleterious effects of Trump's one big beautiful bill on not just the American people, but quite frankly,
Yeah.
the people in your district that you're supposed to represent?
I call it the large, lousy law. The large, lousy law. Some people are saying it's a horrible bill, and I agree with that.
Some people say,
Look,
I love how he always says that. Some people say I'm the best negotiator. Well, some people say your bill sucks.
exactly. Look, I think that I think your viewers, your listeners probably know the highlights, but I'll just cover some of them. Basically, to fund tax cuts in the trillions of dollars for the wealthiest among us, it's basically cutting and shredding the social safety net. It's going to result in 17 million people uninsured. It's going to result in millions of people going without food assistance, educational assistance, housing assistance, and it's going to hurt our healthcare systems to the extent that everybody is going to be affected, in my humble opinion, regardless of whether you have private health insurance or Medicare or Medicaid. You're going to be hurt. And so this is just a horrible statement of values, not to mention horrible public policy and legislation. I think we Democrats have to do everything we can to hold people accountable who voted for it and then run on an agenda of reversing, slowing, stopping the cuts in January 2027 when we take control of Congress and the Senate.
Well, it's funny you mentioned the timeline here because this is the and again, we're gonna discuss this because this is like my mission statement on my channel, and so I want to close with it. But Republicans, I would argue, are terrible at governing because their policies are wildly unpopular. They're really good at politicking, congressmen, and quite frankly, I think collectively they're better than the Democratic Party when it comes to cynical, ruthless politicking. And you all have to step up your game. But even like with the cuts you mentioned, they're timing these cuts perfectly. They know it's going to screw over not just liberals and progressives in blue states, but their own damn constituents. And so they're trying to, time these things perfectly so that people won't feel the cuts immediately, right? They're trying to delay so as to reap the political benefit from it. And then because they expect to lose the midterms, stick you all with the bill. The Medicaid cuts they're projecting won't kick in for another year or two, right? So like, how do you deal with that knowing that we know what's going to happen, but there's a very good chance that the full negative impacts will not be felt prior to the midterms where constituents can punish the Republicans for screwing them over?
I think that it would be, I hear what you're saying, but I actually see it the opposite way. And here's what I mean, which is that I believe that they are going to get punished if we Democrats do our job of holding them accountable for taking this vote, which, as you know, is deeply unpopular with Americans. I saw polling that shows that it's like 30, 40, 50 points underwater. And the more people learn about it, the more pissed off they are about this bill.
Congressman, I think
so
your
that's
camera.
point one. Point
your
two
camera froze there for just a
ones
second there.
that
Can you hear me?
Oh, yeah. Yeah.
Okay,
Can
good.
you hear me
So
now?
yeah. So you said that, I'm sorry, that people are going to be pissed off the more they hear about it.
Yeah. So that's point number one. Point number two is that we have to run on an agenda of slowing, reversing, and doing everything we can to stop those cuts. I don't think that we will be punished for somehow those cuts being on the horizon because we voted against it. However, it would be malpractice of us not to try to do everything we can to throw sand in the gears and prevent these cuts from happening. But I still think, remember, they have Project 2025. We have Project 2026 and 28. And Project 2028 is winning back the White House. And we're going to be spending 2 years between 2027 and 2028 doing everything we can to make the contrast between us and the Republicans very clear. And we have to use all tools necessary to do just that.
So I guess to summarize, because of the bill's objective unpopularity, you're saying between that and maximizing that unpopularity with outreach by the Democrats, perhaps town halls in swing districts and red districts, since Republicans are hiding from their constituents, that the delay efforts will allow you all to be rewarded in the midterms, even if the negative impacts aren't directly felt until after.
Yeah, and actually, I think there's going to be negative impacts that are felt, unfortunately, even now. The best example of that is in rural and underserved communities with their hospitals and healthcare systems. Those healthcare systems are already under tremendous stress. With these cuts looming on the horizon, some of these hospitals, unfortunately, are going to close or reduce access to services starting soon. Why? Because they too are trying to project how to handle what's about to come down the pike. And what's worse is that in many communities, the nurses, the doctors, the staff of these places are going to start leaving because they don't want to be part of the train wreck that's about to come. And so there's going to be a downward spiral, unfortunately, in the healthcare systems in these areas because of the bill being signed into law even now. The other thing I have to say, which doesn't get reported much, two things. One, there's a huge repeal of clean energy tax credits, okay? That is causing massive problems in the clean energy industry throughout the country, including in red states, of course in blue states. I was in Bloomington Normal, where Rivian is based, and it was going gangbusters. And now they're very worried that the elimination of the EV tax credits is basically going to, really hurt their industry in a big way. And it's going to lead to less business starting now. And so I think all of these problems are kind of manifesting in different timelines, but we Democrats have to be consistent in shining a light on the harm that's occurring now, but also over time.
Yeah, I mean, one good example to prove your point is, and this story went viral, and quite frankly, your Republican colleague, Don Bacon, did not respond to it well, but that hospital in rural Nebraska made national news because right after the OBB was passed and Representative Bacon voted for it, I was really disappointed by that. It shut down in advance. So I think you're right that we will start seeing, advanced negative impacts, and Democrats have an opportunity to really highlight that and bring that to people's national attention. I also want to
Can I bring up one other thing real quick? One of the, I believe one of the most evil parts of the large lousy law is the imposition of work reporting requirements. They call it work requirements. It's actually paperwork requirements. Even for adults who are working, and the vast majority of people on Medicaid are already working, millions are. And so I believe we have to shine a light on that particular issue because not only because of the harm that's created, but I'm planning to introduce legislation to basically mandate similar work reporting requirements for members of Congress. Imagine if members of Congress had to fill out that same paperwork to prove that they were working in order to receive government health insurance. I think that would be a big pain. And it's something that just highlights the cynical approach that the Republicans have taken with this large, lousy law.
Yeah, I know. I'm thinking your potential future colleague, Senator Ted Cruz of Texas, he podcasts so much. He's so concerned about his podcast. I wonder what it would be like for him to fill out that paperwork. He might not be able to keep his job. I mean, it is interesting, too, how Republicans campaign their entire worldview is how the government sucks and it's broken and inefficient, and then they do everything in their power to make it even more so, more bureaucratic red tape. They waged a war on the IRS direct filing system, for example.
Crazy.
They don't want to streamline things for the American people. Well, Congressman, listen, as we wrap up, I really want to dedicate some time to the future of the Democratic Party, and I'm conscious of the fact that you're, at the Capitol, and so it's not exactly like we can go in depth on your campaign for Senate because of ethics requirements. So you answer this however you feel comfortable. But obviously, Donald Trump is unpopular. There's no question about it. He's the most unpopular president in modern American history, at the worst 100 days of any American president. The Republican Party has its issues, but the Democratic Party has issues as well. We're not particularly popular at the moment. A lot of people are fed up. Independents are fed up. Republicans are obviously fed up, and even fellow Democrats are. And so I'm curious how you feel about if the Democratic Party is at a crossroads and what needs to be done differently. You're running for Senate. You're 51 years old, which means you're a teenager in the Democratic Party, right? So what in terms of rhetoric and tactics and outreach and policy are you pushing for your party to do differently? Because I think a lot of it has to change.
So I would just respectfully submit 3 points, okay? One, we have to be talking about the economic pain points that people are feeling much more than we are, and attempt to fix them. I'm talking about for whether you're working poor, middle class, growing a business, we should be talking about how do you afford a home? How do you educate your kid? How do you afford childcare? Afford healthcare, and how do you retire with dignity? Those should be kind of among the set of topics that we are relentlessly focused on, because I believe that the most sensitive nerve in the body is the pocketbook nerve, and unless we attend to that, I think they'll tune us out on everything else. Secondly, we should be speaking to people on much more different platforms than we are right now, such as Pondering Politics. You have a tremendous following, and similar podcasts and YouTube opportunities exist. And quite frankly, I think Democrats, feel uncomfortable kind of going on these platforms. And I think we have to become much more comfortable talking to people where they are. Third, we have to be action figures. We can't just be issuing press releases and tweets. We got to actually get in the game and do whatever we can to help change things. I'll just give you an example. When hundreds, if not thousands of people were summoned in the Chicago area to come to an ICE facility in the South Loop of Chicago, to quote unquote report for a check-in appointment, they were then snatched by ICE from their families, including on Father's Day. People didn't know where they were. Of course, my office contacted ICE. Of course, they didn't respond. I just went to the ICE facility myself. I showed up, I knocked on the door, I went inside, met with a masked ICE agent, and proceeded to ask a lot of questions and put them on video.
Congressman, can I interrupt you for just a second? Because this is
Yeah.
really important, because we're seeing a lot of misinformation online. Can you please confirm that federal law requires ICE to grant you access? They don't get discretion over this. Isn't it written into the damn law that if a Republican or Democratic
Yes.
congressman wants to go into an ICE facility, they need to shut up and get out of the way?
Yes, they keep trying to change the requirements in terms of notice requirements and stuff, but I think we have to keep showing up, and we have to, make sure that people know that we're going to conduct our oversight regardless of what they feel is the law or what they want the law to be. The law is clear that we have the oversight responsibility and prerogative to do this. But then we have to do more. We have to press, and that's what I'm doing on the DHS right now. I'm trying to subpoena Kristi Noem before the Oversight Committee as a follow-up to my visit to this ICE facility. And then once we take control, we're going to hold the purse strings, and we have to make sure that they can't use money for what they're doing right now. So it's a whole range of actions that we have to take. It's not just speeches or tweets or press releases, although those are important. They're necessary, but they're not sufficient. And we have to be the ones pushing, because at the end of the day, I think that resistance matters. And I think Trump responds to resistance. That's why he's called Taco. Trump always chickens out, whether it's on tariffs or other things. We have to push, but it requires pushing.
No, listen, I'd love to hear it. And somebody, listen, I'm an unapologetic progressive Democrat. I don't pretend that both sides are the same. I don't pretend both parties are the same. I believe that the Democratic Party on its worst day is better than the Republican Party on its best day in terms of its elected representatives. I will tell you unsolicited things to think about. I think that you all showing up to the ICE detention facilities and going viral for those heated confrontations that are still within the law. There are no fights breaking out, but you're going there and engaging in oversight. That's important. I think the town halls that you all are doing in red districts and in swing districts are vitally important. I think that, yes, your media appearances, the fact that you're coming here at Pondering Politics, you showed up on our podcast, Live and Learn, you and your colleagues should continue to do that. You have been doing that, and that's great. I also think that on oversight, Democrats have been very, very good in the past 2 years in getting better. With he's no longer on the caucus or in the committee, but Jamie Raskin, AOC, Robert Garcia, Dan Goldman, Jasmine Crockett. I mean, like Maxwell Frost. Like there has been a raising of the game. You all have been bringing the proverbial fight to the Republicans, and we want to see that because I think too often, and we'll talk about this maybe in a follow-up interview when you can talk more about your Senate race. But there is this perception among more tenured Democratic politicians like Senator Dick Durbin that, well, listen, in the age of Trump, if we wag our fingers and appeal to their better angels, Republicans will see the light of day and they'll back off from their extremism. That is objectively wrong. It's been proven wrong time and time again. So I think I can speak on behalf of my audience. What we want to know is if and when you guys get back into power in one or both chambers, or you have a trifecta, that there will be a ruthlessness there, that it's like, listen, we will deliver results for our constituents and the American people, and we're going to play a bit of the Trump playbook. We're going to dictate the terms of the engagement. We will investigate Trump corruption, not behind the scenes, not quietly in our monocles and our bow ties like yes, no, we're going to do it in public, in broad daylight. We're going to do to the Trump corruption what Republicans tried to do with the alleged corruption of President Biden, which wasn't there. We want to see fight and energy. We want to see sass. We want to see swag. We want to see charisma. And I'm hoping, like we've seen steps in that direction. Congressman Garcia is now going to be the ranking member on oversight. That is a solid, solid step in the right direction. And that's what we want to see from all of you.
I think it's in service of one goal, if I would respectfully submit, which is we can never go through this again. Okay. We cannot have like, you and I are Democrats, we're progressive. I call myself a radical common sense progressive. Whatever label you attach, you could even be a never Trump Republican. We need a coalition of people to come together to make sure never again do we go through this episode in our history. That means we have to architect a set of almost like post-Watergate set of reforms to prevent this from happening again. As Americans, as patriots, we want the Constitution to function. We want checks and balances. We want due process of law. We want good public policy. We want everyone to be able to realize their American dream. But that seems to me to be what people really yearn for right now when I talk to them on the streets in Schaumburg or anywhere else.
No, 100%. Like at this point, I think there's even a wider acceptance of range of policy. It could be, as progressive as AOC or as more moderate as Jared Moskowitz. But what those two Congress people have in common? They're fighters. They're funny. Yeah. They're sassy. They give the Republicans hell. And it doesn't matter if it's on more moderate policy or progressive policy. And I think that's what your constituents want to see. So good for you. I'm excited to hear what you have to say on this. And I'm looking forward to a follow-up interview where we can dive deeper in your Senate campaign. Congressman, thank you so much. Is there anything you can preview on the horizon? I know you said you're going to try to subpoena Homeland Security Secretary Noem, but anything you can leave the audience with to be paying attention for in the next coming weeks?
Well, I think that, look, August is when we're out of session. So, before we go on out of session in August, these next 2 weeks are going to be very busy on Capitol Hill. So pay attention to what's happening. There's a bunch of hearings coming up in all these different committees. And, we need to kind of pay special attention to the appropriations process. That is happening right now for the 2026 fiscal year. And we need to put up a fight in this appropriations process because, quite frankly, they are going to try to do even more damage than they've done so far with the large, lousy law through the appropriations process. So stay tuned to that.
All right, Congressman, thank you so much. Looking forward to having you on again. Thank you.
Thank you so much.